it's 1 o'clock. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Welcome to the January 20th GGC meeting. I'll be your chair this afternoon. Before we get started, I just wanted to give a quick shout out and a tremendous thank you to all the hard-working staff who cleared our roads, salted our sidewalks, cleared our parking lot, did a tremendous job.
And by law.
And by law.
Bylaw, where's bylaw? Anybody else?
And by law. And by law.
And by law. Huh?
How about the awesome counselors that fielded all those calls?
Yay.
I sent them all to Rob.
So thanks very much. That was amazing.
Still blushing.
Okay, let's call this meeting to order. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest from anyone? Okay, none. So we'll move to the minutes. The adoption of the minutes, the regular minutes of December 20th, 2019. Any comments on those?
Move to adopt.
Okay, Sterling Lee has moved to adopt. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, it's carried. The closed session minutes of that same day. Any questions on that or comments? The mayor has moved it. All in favor? Any opposed? None? It's carried. And the special meeting minutes from January 6th, 2020. Any comments on those? None? Councillor Tattle-Morin will move them. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, carried. The consent agenda, 4.1 is the only one that has been pulled by the mayor. So we'll get to that, the delegation.
Is it too late? I know
of
we're
powers
supposed to
and duties.
historically ask to pull ahead, but may I pull 4.3 with the chair's permission?
What would you like to pull?
4.3.
Okay, 4.3 by Councillor Lee, reach out
Move
Councillor
the
Lee.
balance.
And we will move,
Move the
I guess, just 4.2. And who would like to move that?
The mayor.
Mayor Collier, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so let's talk about 4.1, delegation of various powers and duties. Mayor Collier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to, who wrote this? Alex isn't here. Is this Nicole, I guess?
Yeah.
So, makes sense. I just have a question regarding the CAO and the legal challenges. And just what do we do right now? I'm just trying, there it is. Like right now, we're approving the CAO, if we approve this today, to enter into settlement agreements of $100,000 or less against matters brought against the town. What is the current?
Thank you, through the chair. So there's a couple of different areas to think about. So I'll talk first about the bylaw enforcement area. So in this area, we regularly approve settlement agreements all the time as part of our daily, weekly, monthly operation. They're very small. Typically, they're in the neighborhood of $300, $400, up to maybe $5,000, just as a way to avoid going to court. So these would be things like property standards orders, in some cases parking, dogs off leash, that sort of thing. So it's more efficient and less costly for us to enter into a settlement than to go to court. So again, this is something we do as part of our day-to-day business, and we.
But what is the ceiling for that right now? Is it 10,000? What is the maximum
there is
you
no-
can approve without? Oh, there is none.
There is no ceiling.
Okay.
And so staff has, I think, assumed since the beginning of us operating a bylaw enforcement regime that delegated authority was sort of implied as part of the authority to operate that regime. But in recent years, we've had one or two larger settlements, and we just want to be comfortable that that staff are operating under proper authority in settling some of those files. So again, it's very rare that we would have one that exceeds even $5,000, but we just want to sort of entrench that authority in a formal way. So that is bylaw enforcement. Other areas, so one of the things we talked about in the report in terms of other existing delegated authorities, so right now under a council-approved policy having to do with the approval of agreements, the CAO has authority to approve settlement agreements as it relates to employee and labor matters. But those are really the only delegated authorities that are in place right now. So this would apply to basically anything else outside of uninsured claims.
So we delegated authority for the CAO up to, is it 500,000 or was it 100,000?
There is no delegated authority
No,
right
for
now.
purchasing. We had delegated for purchasing. Is it 500? which is a pretty big jump from, I think it was 50 before. So if you're saying the average claim we have is between $300 and $5,000, why did we come up with $100,000? Like, how often would we see something like that?
Okay, so.
Have you ever seen anything like that as far as a settlement?
So, sorry, when I was talking about the $300, $5,000, I was just speaking to
Those are bylaw
our
things.
day-to-day
Right,
bylaw stuff.
right.
There are all kinds of instances outside of that, either where a claim is brought against us and we are,
Mhm.
it's an uninsured claim and we're mounting a defense, or where we have brought a claim and we are looking to settle that. So, I just had an example. So for example, Jeff may be able to speak to this, but there's been instances where, like with minutes of settlement, for example, where it's time sensitive and maybe it's in summer recess and staff don't have the authority to enter into minutes of settlement under an LPAT hearing for something that's really not of any order of magnitude. So that's the type of thing that this is coming or trying to get at. To your question about where we came up with that amount, we canvassed the other municipalities in Durham region, and there was a bit of an array of delegated authorities that relates to settlement agreements, but the city of Oshawa's was $100,000, and we thought that was an appropriate amount. But if council's more comfortable with a different amount, certainly open to that.
So just reading this, thank you for that, just reading this, or their designate, so the CAO or their designate to enter into a settlement agreement in relation to any legal action brought by or against the town, subject to a financial upset limit of $100,000. My only issue with this is, if we have something that's $50,000,
Mhm.
and somebody's suing us, I wanna know about that. So by delegating authority, that doesn't come to council. So I mean, if something's 25,000, 50,000, it's still a lot of money, but it's not, in the big picture, as significant. But if we get up to this higher level, I think that's something that council should be advised at. So I'd be fine with delegating authority, but I don't know if I'm, and especially given the examples, willing to go up to the 100,000 off the start, especially since it hasn't really been an issue. But you said there isn't a ceiling now, so if we had a settlement of 100,000 in the past, there's nothing saying it has to be brought to council today. Is that accurate?
Well, no, that it would be just the opposite. The default would be that it must come to council.
It must come to council, okay, which I don't recall ever seeing one. So I don't think this is something that's gonna be used a lot. I'd probably be comfortable amending it to say 50 and leave it at that. And if it becomes onerous, we can look at revisiting it in a year or two if we find that it's being a problem, but I don't know. I still would like to know. So that's my questions on that. I might move that amendment. The other is to do with our, staff is not recommending delegating for our pay. And I understand, and I guess this is a Mary Lou question. I get what you're saying, that often when we do our council remuneration
Remuneration.
policy, we make some changes. But I think, given last year, we actually did more of a deep dive and did a report looking into not just pay and car allowance and RSP contribution, but into all the different things that other municipalities have. And I think we sort of have fleshed all those out fairly well. I don't see us making real changes going forward. So I would be actually, we have a great policy, it's been in place for a long time, and it's just whatever the average is of the municipalities, it's fair, it keeps things current, and I would be okay delegating authority for just to follow that policy, unless there is a minor change, like what happened last year with the removal of the 1/3 tax-free. Is that a problem if we were to do that? Because you recommended not doing it. Yes?
Can I speak to that? So in respect to delegating authority to make adjustments to the salary based on the policy, again, we're not recommending that for a number of reasons, but I think as far as simplicity, it can be done. It's typically just a calculation.
Mhm.
And just to give you a bit of history on council remuneration very quickly, we didn't want to get into too much detail in the report, but there actually was a period of time within the last 10 years where, or 15 years, where this actually was delegated to staff, and staff exercised the authority to adjust council remuneration in accordance with the policy for a couple of years. But then what was happening was there was a number of adjustments that were required to things like travel allowance, benefits. If you look at the council remuneration bylaw, there's a lot of components to compensation besides just the salary. And so when tweaks were required to those things, because it's not as simple to look across the lakeshore and say, okay, you know, calculate the average of those things. They're not often numbers, it's often not apples to apples. So there was often adjustments required, that triggered a report to council anyways. So it's sort of, the whole point of delegated authority is to create an efficiency, and so that efficiency just wasn't being realized. So, understanding your motion, I think we would maybe just need some clarity on, are you looking to delegate authority to staff only to adjust
Based on the
salary? Or are you looking to delegate authority to staff to adjust all of those other components as well?
To my understanding, the only real adjustments, I mean, the percentage for RSP is a percentage, and that was just looked at and adjusted. The other things I don't see is items that are gonna change year over year, for the most part. Now that we've got the 1/3 tax-free out of the way, I think everything is really just gonna be the average of the salary and the average of the car allowance, which is what it has been most of the time anyway, my recollection. So, the other thing is, you know, some of the other delegated authorities, we just talked about one for $100,000. When we talk about the council salary adjustment, it's generally a very small amount, like under a couple $1,000s for a year collectively amongst all of us, in most cases. Last year was a bit of a difference because of the legislative change, but usually it's gonna be a very minor little bump, and I don't mind delegating a $2,000 decision to staff. If it saves having to have a report come back and having to go through the whole thing, and quite honestly, we don't usually pull that anyway. We just do, just to get it on the record, just for transparency, but really, if we have that policy and it works, I have no problem delegating that, if you don't see it as a problem.
So just for clarity, if staff was proposing a change to, say, benefits or retirement benefits or survivor benefits based on something they were seeing in another municipality,
That would be different.
So you do not wish to delegate authority for adjustments to those things, only for salary adjustments?
Right, so, and I'll trust you to help me with the wording, but basically, the only two things I think we're really talking about are salary and car allowance. So I would basically, if you wanna, well, I guess we're getting the motion. I can't change the report, the staff report, so how would I do the amendments to the chair, to the clerk on that?
Just give me a brief moment to draft this up.
Okay.
Regional Councillor Lee, in the meantime?
All right, in the meantime.
Oh.
In the meantime.
That's fine.
Well, just to follow up with that, is there a possibility to set a maximum amount of which we can delegate? And should it go over that, then it goes back to council again? For example, you know, to the mayor's point, it only is going to be a few thousand collectively. If it goes over the $10,000 amount, then it goes back to council to discuss. Would that be more transparent from the clerk's point of view?
Well, again, I don't, we could probably predict with some certainty what the, you know, rough amount of salary adjustment would be year over year, probably somewhere in line with the CPI. And so we could set a threshold that is, you know, somewhere slightly above that limit. That's not really the problem I'm seeing with this.
Right.
The problems are really
The
all
ancillary
those other
benefits.
components
Yeah.
of compensation, and then as well as the transparency concerns that we've outlined in the report.
Thank you, sorry, thank you.
Regional
So,
Council.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Regional Councillor Dias.
So, if staff had that responsibility, how would council be notified of those changes? Just through personal mail, that maybe an adjustment has been made?
Through the chair to Regional Council Dias, it would be through the budget process. Through the budget process, there is a summary analysis of each section, including mayor and council. So it would outline the increases for wages and benefits.
So we'd have to approve it through the budget process?
It would be approved through the budget process, correct?
Thank you.
Are there any more questions? Do we want to wait for?
Actually, I'll just do the first. So the first amendment, and again, I can't change the wording of the report, because the staff report, that's correct, right?
That's okay, so you could just.
So the first one is just, instead of delegating authority to the CEO for legal matters of 100,000 to 50,000. kind of however you wanna word that, that would just be the First Amendment, and we might as well do them separately in case somebody likes one but not the other. I don't think I need to speak to it. Just-
Okay. So the wording is going to be, do you have wording there, Sarah?
Through the chair to the clerk, being that just with the wording here, where we can't change the wording within the report, how would you best like this to be?
So the amendment would just, so the main motion is that the draft bylaw to delegate various powers and duties be approved by council.
And just
the
add on
amendment
the
would be
addition?
subject to the following changes.
Gotcha.
And the first change would be,
To change the
that the
Delegated
limit for
authority.
CO approval of settlements be
To
adjusted to
$50,000.
50,000.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. So are there questions about that? Counselor Lee?
Through the chair to the CAO, do we anticipate any issues with setting a cap at half the amount that you guys had initially recommended?
So, the only settlements that I've been involved in since I've been here are labor issues, so terminations and so on. But if it is council's wish that I come to council and report that, that's council's direction. So I don't see that it would be any issue except for the interest of time.
Right, because sometimes those issues can be time sensitive, you need to call council immediately.
Or it could be summer.
Or it could be summer where for 2 months we don't meet, and you'd have to call an emergency meeting of council? Sorry.
Sorry, through the chair, I just wanted to add, in case it's helpful, the bylaw does provide that nothing precludes the CAO from bringing settlement proposals to council when they are under that amount. This really, in a lot of ways, comes down to, the trust that council has in the administration, and that staff are able to judge which items might have a particular sensitivity or might be of interest to council and is not precluded from bringing those anyway. So just
Right.
in case that's helpful.
This is just to use if needed, not necessarily as the baseline for every decision.
Yeah, and that's the way it's framed in the
Right.
bylaw.
Was there anything else, or?
Well, I was just gonna say that, it would be very seldom that a termination settlement would be below 50,000.
Right.
That's not an issue here, that's already delegated without limit.
It says, no, okay.
I'm sorry, CAO Baker, I didn't
No,
hear what you said.
The clerk is.
Okay.
It's a separate item.
Oh, separate.
I understood it as being a separate item as well.
So just to confirm, the CEO doesn't see conflict or any
No.
issue prohibiting you from doing your job to the best of your ability? Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments about that? Okay. Could we hear it aloud one more time before we vote on
Sure.
it?
Motion to amend the draft bylaw to delegate various powers and duties attachment 1 be approved by council subject to the following amendment, that the delegated authority of the CAO, I lost the wording in the report, bear with me, essentially be changed from $100,000 to $50,000. Where is it?
From nothing now.
That's good.
We believe you, Sarah.
Okay, and is that the motion you
was
want to
it.
put forward? Yeah, okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
And the second was, Madam Clerk, do you have some wording?
Yeah, so the second one would read as follows, so subject to the following additional change. That staff be delegated authority to adjust council salary and travel allowance in accordance with the existing policy, which considers the Lakeshore average, and that where adjustments are required to other components of compensation, they shall be brought forward to council for consideration.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Motion. Are there any comments or questions on that motion? Original Councilor Lee?
Question to the mover. I guess, why would we do, and from your point of view, what is the need for this, as opposed to just the way we're doing it now?
Just
Because we're new to
efficiency.
council, right?
Just efficiency, we still, the acting commissioner of finance or director of finance has basically said what I didn't say, and that is that it's approved, that we have to approve a budget anyway.
Right.
It just saves staff having to prepare a report based on the existing policy and bring a report to a GGC meeting that's a rubber stamp. I mean, it's a very small amount, it's just expediting the process. and
So the
just
decision,
one less.
the debate would happen at the budget time as opposed to a separate GGC meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So that's about
Good.
all.
Okay, Regional Councilor Dias?
Thank you. I have a concern in that I know it goes through the budget. The budget's a pretty thick document for people to understand, even us sometimes. So I think it lacks transparency. The one thing people watch for all the time is what we're giving ourselves. whatever illumination is and what we're doing with their taxpayers' dollars, as they should. So I think, you know, it's not a big deal. I don't see why it can't come, you know, back to us on a regular basis for any kind of increases. There have been some years where we have decided not to take any increases, so that would mean it's almost automatic. We would see it through the budget, I hear, but like I say, it's pretty onerous task to read through the budget and find all those details. So I would support that.
Thank you. Councillor Khan, did you have your hand up? No. Councillor Tyler Moore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to maybe Nicole, or sorry, Clerk. Could you confirm if we don't have this the way it is now, and we put it so that it's only in the budget, that it would still be on public record?
Yes, it would certainly be a public record in the sense that if somebody asked for that information, we would release it.
Okay.
Without question.
Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Dice?
Just to add to that, though, I'm sorry, in response to that question, I would ask then, the way it is now, it comes to GGC and it would have to be ratified at council. So then the public would get 2 notifications. It would be basically in your agenda, it would be in your minutes, so it's something they can find. And they'd have more notification of it happening than if it's just saying the budget was passed. That's my question.
Yes, I would also just add that the finance department is required every year to issue this statement of council remuneration, which is a public report on a GGC agenda, so it would be reported out that way as well.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Nicole. I just, when you, yeah, it was good what you said. Sorry.
Through the chair to Councilor Dice, I just want to confirm that even though it's showing in the budget process, it's just a summary version, the detail is not there. So it is always easier if the rate increase or any sort of increases are approved ahead of time, then the numbers are final in the budget book. If there are changes, we would have to go back and recreate or update those numbers. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
Mayor Dwyer.
Okay, hopefully bring it full circle. So we're getting a little bit down the weeds on this. First of all, ever since this policy came into place, council has never, not even once, debated the amount. The amount is the amount, not once. There's a couple of years where it was no increase, but that's just because that's what the average was. One year it's $104 or whatever for the entire year, like less than $10 a month. Like really, this is not something that council has ever spent much time on in my 16 years here. It's a rubber stamp. Now, it's published, as the clerk said, and that's what I wanted to say when I first put my hand up. There's at the end of the year, it comes out exactly what our salary and benefits are, what our communications budget have we spent, what our other expenses are, what our travel is. It's all published each year, and that's statutory requirement, I believe. So there's no, this is just a matter of streamlining a process. This is not something that we're ever gonna debate, and it's never, well, historically never has been. So, I don't know, this is not an effort to try and remove transparency or hide anything. There's several different safeguards along the way where the public is kept informed on all of these. So just want to put that out there, because I don't want anybody thinking this is a way to get around the transparency. This is just a matter of, you know, if you guys want another report in your GGC, fine. But just trying to move things along, that's all.
Are there any further comments or questions? Director Cooper, could you please read it again?
Sure. That staff be delegated authority to adjust council's salary and travel allowance on an annual basis in accordance with the existing policy of adjustments being based on the average of Pickering, Whitby, Oshawa, and Clarington, and that where adjustments are required to other components of council compensation, they shall be brought forward to council for consideration.
Thank you. Is that the motion? With the wording? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Move the motion as amended?
Move the motion.
Main motion as amended.
The main motion as amended. Sorry, do I ask for something then?
So,
Oh, okay, so the main motion, all in favor? Any opposed? And it carries. Thank you. Okay. So that's 4.1. So now we will go to 4.3, which was pulled by Regional Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for indulging me for the last minute edition of this. Just a question to the Director of Rec. It shows the number of utilizations from 122 in 2015 to as high as 169 in 2018. How big are the waiting lists ultimately then as a result? What's the average of the waiting list size?
Through the chair to Councillor, it does depend on year to year and time of year as well. We do see that there are spikes depending on what's happening in the sector in terms of support. So, for example, when you do see years that are lower, that can be attributed sometimes to other additional supports that are available in the community. What I can say, if we look at an industry average, is we are seeing, both from a demographic perspective, more children identified with special needs. Because when we speak about special needs, it's from all perspectives, so whether that's intellectual, social, behavioral, and I think parents are becoming more savvy and more of a comfort level of accessing these programs and services. There's less of a stigma of identifying your child and being able to access services. So we are continuing to see an increase. So this is why, we think it's important just to make sure the council's aware of it. The other piece as well is those families who are accessing this program from the town of Ajax are overwhelmingly positive about it and feel that it makes a huge difference for their children. Being able to have the comfort level to have your child access 4 weeks of camp, or a March break program is a huge relief and respite for caregivers, which wouldn't exist without that support. So it certainly is, I think, industry-wide, we're seeing increases, and all municipalities are talking about a demand for service that's increasing beyond, in many cases, their capacity to deliver with current resources.
Do we get statistics as to the number of children in Ajax diagnosed with ASD? Like 169 in 2018, is that
Right.
on the higher end of the number, lower end of the number?
It's hard to say. I mean, the data sets that are available to us aren't necessarily as helpful as they could be,
Sure.
depending on what the areas that they're measuring those indicators. So there's a big challenge with the data. We're plugged into as many data sets as we can be to try and access that, but it's really not, I would say it's not a good number necessarily. We are partnered with many of the industry leaders like Grandview and other organizations who help us to try and anecdotally put those numbers together. So this isn't a full reflection of all of the children
Right.
who could access service. So that's as well why we're, aware that the demands will, I would imagine, continue to increase.
And is there some sort of provision to ensure that it's only Ajax families?
Yes. So there is we do look at residency when we do the registration. Our inclusion coordinator also meets with the family.
Great.
So sometimes parents aren't as aware of all the needs, or, sometimes there's a fear of disclosing all the needs of their children, thinking that perhaps the town will deny their child access to the program or service. So it's really important, along with residency, also to ensure that the appropriate staffing levels and care plans are put in place for those children. If you see in the report, staff are tasked with things like toileting, personal care, behavior management. It's quite complex, and depending on the child and their needs, it's very different from family to family.
That's great. I just think, just the last comment is, I think it's something that it's great that the town of Ajax does. I hope we continue to expand it, because I think it's something that we could really, really set the benchmark for in terms of Durham and the rest of the province. So thank you very much, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Pleased to say, actually, we are recognized as having sort of a leadership role in Durham in terms of inclusion supports, and being one of the municipalities who's definitely making more spaces available to parents. So that is a good thing. I would love to see us continue that. I think it's really important.
Absolutely.
And quite frankly, access to programs and services is a basic human right, so it's the right thing to do from a number of perspectives.
Thank you.
Regional Councillor
sorry.
Crawford?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. How are the leaders, where are they trained? Because it's not like just giving swimming lessons, it's
Right.
very, very different service delivery. How are they trained?
So, through the chair, so certainly the screening process for interviews and is different than a camp staff member, for example, who is not requiring to provide inclusion supports. We have a number of set criteria and training that they're expected to have. So for example, nonviolent crisis intervention, G-tube training, all of the different types of interventions or supports that they would be required to give. We do training programs in partnership with Grandview and with other organizations. Happy to say as well, we recently certified some of our own staff to be the trainers on nonviolent crisis intervention and behavior management. So that's a really great capacity piece that we were able to put in-house because it's quite expensive to have staff trained on nonviolent crisis intervention, for example. So looking at knowing that this need is going to continue, ensuring we have the in-house resources to do that was really important. So it's quite a, I would say, a robust training program. So there are things we look for on the resume, and then there's things that we offer as the town to ensure that people are ready to face sort of the customer needs that they're going to be presented with.
Yeah, so like on a personal note, the church that I attend, we noticed that we had an increase in special needs children. And it's interesting that what you take for granted, most parents with ASD, ASA, is it?
Sorry, I don't want to get it wrong.
On the spectrum.
Yeah.
They can't even go to church. They
Right.
can't do anything. And so we've started a program called VIP Kids.
Mhm.
And we managed that through the Kids Work program, because there is a need out there and there's nowhere for them to go, a lot of them, so it is increasing, I think, the spectrum has just gotten wider, so it seems to be increasing just because, they fit into it differently, I believe, yeah.
Through the chart, I think there's a bit of both happening. I think we're definitely seeing some increases in certain diagnosis, and whether that's attributed to parents being willing to, accept diagnosis, or if there is industry trends. The other piece that we do in addition to inclusion supports is we do have specialized programs as well. So for example, we do have a special needs Zumba program. We have programs that are geared absolutely to individuals and families with special needs. The other piece that we did incorporate into our special events program, which you may have noted last year, or 2019, yes, last year, Canada Day in Pumpkinville had sensory zones.
Yes.
So we had special areas laid aside during our special events for families to access with their children. As you can imagine, Canada Day for a child with special needs would be absolutely something they can't participate in, but they were able to take advantage of that in 2019, and that's something that we see ourselves continuing to roll out, because again, access is a
necessary.
human right, and
Yeah.
we need to ensure that we're doing the right things as a municipality for our families.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Move report.
So, I just have, I'll call on you.
Thank you, that's all I
Okay.
ask.
Thank you very much for this, Director Vaughn. I love that we do this. This is all about inclusion and acceptance, and being able to have everyone have the right, the same rights. So, is there ever a time, or has there been a time where you've had the staff resources to offer that specialized partnership, where and a parent has asked for it, where you've had to say no?
We have had to wait list on occasion, so where the demand has exceeded our capacity to deliver. So for example, we will provide up to 4 weeks of summer camp because we know that there's so many families that need to access that summer camp supports. Certainly families would like to see us be able to offer summer camp support for the entire summer. But we have to be able to ensure that we're able to provide opportunities for as many families who register in the program. So we sort of go week by week to see if, where's our demand at for this session or this week, how many workers do we have, how can we really equitably divide that up. So their service isn't denied, but they are waitlisted, and sometimes they are capped because that's all we can provide. That no family goes unserved, because we're really careful of ensuring that all families who apply have some access to a program or service. They may just not get everything that they want.
And, okay, thank you for that. So is there a chance that someone, okay. I'm not sure how, I have the question in my head, it's not coming out of my mouth. Okay, so would there be a time perhaps where you have resources, but but a parent signs a child up and they're not really eligible for that? Or do you say yes to everyone who registers, as long as you have the resource? Like, I guess the
So-
requirement, right?
Right, the inclusion coordinator does that, and that's why that meeting
Right,
and
right.
review is really important with the inclusion coordinator, because they really understand sort of diagnosis and treatment plans and program supports. So they're, one, verifying what the needs are during the process, and not saying that they're, assuming that the needs aren't real, they're actually ascertaining how severe those needs are, and is the parent bringing forward all of the needs? Because like I said earlier, sometimes parents are, reluctant because they don't want to stigmatize their child, or they don't want their child to
Right.
potentially refuse service. So there is a sort of a period of, for lack of a better word, where they're basically just authenticating and ensuring that we understand all of the needs as they're presented, and then it's also then double checked during the program as well. Because again, sometimes you put a child in a new environment and their needs change.
Sure.
Right, so something may become more pronounced or less pronounced. So we're always adjusting and ensuring. We don't deny, we wouldn't deny family or parents support where there's demonstrated need, to answer your question.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, any other questions? Councillor Lee, would you like to read this?
I would love to, thank you.
Okay, so we'll receive this report for information. All in favor? Any opposed? The mayor's not here, does that matter?
Motion carries.
Okay.
6 on
Motion
7.
carries. Thank you. Okay, so what's next? Okay, we'll finish section 4. Section 5, there is no discussion, so we'll move on to section item 6, presentations, Paradise Park washroom building update. And that would be Director Bridgman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I welcome Lindsay Sinclair, who's going to do the presentation on the Paradise Park washroom building update as reported or requested by council last year for staff to investigate and come back to council with alternate options for consideration. So I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Catherine. As stated, the purpose of this presentation is to provide an update to council on the Paradise Park washroom facility alternative design options that was given as our direction from council last June. We'd like to take this opportunity just to provide an update on the other site improvements that have been completed at Paradise Park. The remaining items were completed this past fall. To date, the wetland restoration work has been completed, as well as the twinning of the waterfront trails, the realignment of Lakeview Boulevard, and the playground retrofit with new park features have all been completed. With regard to the washroom building, staff have explored alternative design options that would have a lower cost than the originally designed building. We've concluded there are two options available. Option 1 is a precast concrete washroom building, and option 2 is the Urban Bloom automatic self-cleaning washroom building. Option 1, the precast concrete washroom building, are industry standard installations within parks as washroom facilities, field houses, and electrical bunkers. The buildings are customizable, including the size, layout, exterior, and interior finishes and features. These buildings are extremely common in other Ontario municipalities as a means to provide washroom facilities within parks. They're a cost-effective alternative to a custom designed and constructed washroom building, while at the same time having the flexibility to determine the size, layout, and aesthetics of the building. They're essentially a shell structure that is made off-site and delivered. The building is then fit up with the remainder of the components, such as the fixtures and the mechanical and electrical works. Staff are proposing a 12 by 24 building with a universal accessible washroom and a unisex washroom with a small mechanical room. The implementation of this would require detailed engineering and specifications to complete a tender package. The building would require daily cleaning and monitoring by our satellite facility staff and routine maintenance from building maintenance staff to ensure it's safe and clean, similar to our other waterfront park buildings such as the Rotary Park, Veterans Point, and Carruthers. The annual utility operating costs are expected to be similar to the other satellite facilities. They include janitorial and general maintenance supplies, as well as the utilities to operate.
The costs are estimated at $4,000 annually. With regard to the maintenance, town staff would have the ability to replace components of the building, such as the toilets, faucets, mechanical systems over the life of the building through our asset lifecycle program. There would be no proprietary fixtures or equipment that would prevent the staff from replacing components of the building over the life of it. The cost estimate for option 1 is based on the washroom containing low-flow toilets, solar-powered proximity faucets, accessible grab bars, baby change tables, and all required washroom features. The exterior would include doors and frames, glass block for natural lighting, a sloped metal roof, and architectural brick and stone veneer cladding. The mechanical system required to operate would be a heating and ventilation system, an instantaneous hot water, and exterior and interior LED lighting on occupancy sensors with daylighting control. The estimated base costs are the same for both options. They include the detailed engineering required and the site preparation work. Some of the site work required includes the grading, servicing, hydro and communication connections, as well as the site features including landscaping, walkways, bike racks, waste containers, drinking fountains, benches, and signage. The building will be equipped with CCTV for security, as well as operate on the town's key scan security system. To present option 2 is the Urban Blue automatic self-cleaning washroom building. Option 2 consists of 2 universal accessible washrooms with a small mechanical room. There are different exterior finish options available for the siding and roof style. Urban Blue is a Canadian-based company that's been manufacturing public washrooms since 2010. They have installed 4 washroom buildings in Alberta and 7 in Quebec. There has not been an Urban Blue washroom installed in Ontario to date. The washroom buildings offers a self-cleaning feature that includes the rinsing and drying of the toilet seat and the floor based on a customized predetermined schedule. You can do it every use, every 5th use, every 20th use, whatever you prefer to program it at. Staff are proposing an 8 by 20 foot building with 2 universal accessible washrooms and a small mechanical room. Again, the implementation of this would also require engineering, drawings, and specifications to complete a tender. While the building is advertised as automatic and self-cleaning, we would still have our town staff monitor it daily for cleaning and security, similar to our other satellite facilities. Urban Blue offers a 3-year or 25,000 use warranty and a 10-year warranty on the building structure. The annual utility operating costs are expected to be similar to other satellite washroom facilities. They include the janitorial and maintenance, as well as the utilities such as the water and hydro. They are also estimated at $4,000 annually. Outside of the warranty offered, the town's building maintenance staff may encounter difficulty completing routine maintenance due to the proprietary equipment used in the building. The cost estimate for option 2 is based on the washroom containing proprietary low-flow toilets, faucets, and a lavatory. They would have accessible grab bars, a baby change table, and all required washroom accessories. The exterior features would include accessible doors, a sloped metal roof, wood and brick veneer cladding. The mechanical systems required to operate it include a heating and ventilation system, underfloor electric heating, an instantaneous hot water heater, and interior and exterior LED lighting on occupancy sensors. As mentioned, the base costs for both buildings are the same. This building would also be equipped with CCTV for security, as well as operate on the town's key scan system. Staff are recommending option 1, the precast concrete washroom building. The town has successfully installed precast concrete washroom buildings in our parks for many years. Manufacturing of precast concrete buildings has become very common in Ontario. It's been in Ontario for over 40 years. The town will be able to replace the building components over the lifespan of the building. Additionally, the buildings are quickly produced and installed, easy to clean, and require low maintenance. They're designed to meet the current OBC for barrier-free design and AODA standards. They are designed to be durable to destructive weather and have been proven to stand the test of time. The design of the building will be aesthetically pleasing to the surroundings with the ability to choose from an array of finishes and textures and colors. And finally, the town would be able to manage the building's assets and components through our asset lifecycle program. The proposed location of the building is in alignment with the north-south linear axis previously defined by the gazebo and the connecting trails. The building will be connected to the east parking lot as well as the park and waterfront trails through accessible paths. The sand volleyball court and natural playground installation at Paradise Park will increase active use opportunities and recreational amenities within the Lake Ontario shoreline. This initiative originated from comments through the public consultation process for the Paradise Park redevelopment. At this time, staff are not recommending the sand and volleyball court and natural playground features at this time, and they will be considered in future long-range capital forecast submissions. The recreation master plan currently underway is expected to drive outcomes related to offered recreation amenities within the town. The estimated cost for this in a future capital budget would be $400,000. Our next steps would be to complete the engineering services required for the washroom building installation. The timeline for that work would be February to May of 2020. Staff would attend the spring 2020 waterfront open house meeting to display the project to residents, and we would be in a position to tender an award for construction in the fall of 2020. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. So we have some questions. Mayor Collier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to staff, whoever would like to answer it. Are these going to be open year-round, or is this just seasonal?
Through the chair, they will be year-round facilities.
They will be year-round, so and they're open in the mornings at whatever time and closed in the evenings at what time?
I would have to check with the facility satellite staff on the
Do we have a
recreation
standard?
schedule.
What is Rotary?
Generally, it's through the chair to the mayor. It is generally dawn to dusk, and with the key scan access system, it allows the flexibility around the programming, the opening and closing of those washrooms.
Okay. And this area, the proposed location at Paradise Park, how many months was that flooded in 2019?
Through the chair to Mayor Collier, that location was not flooded. There was areas of Lakeview Drive that were flooded, but this sits further back from Lakeview
The
Drive.
parking lot?
Parts of these parking lots were flooded, yes.
That's right up against this location though.
It's close to it, yes.
Okay.
In the most recent activity of the water, there was no flooding at Paradise.
Through the chair, sorry, I can add to that. It's actually graded quite a bit up in that hump where the building would go to. It's the highest elevation in the area. We had a
Okay.
recent top of that.
Last June 17th, to Ms. Bridgman, when we had this discussion, and we made the decision not to proceed under the policy, I believe your comment was, and this is where I need clarification, that the servicing is in, but you needed to cap them and then finish the trail connections and the works, and we authorized that. But that's not what I'm seeing in this. In this report today, we're seeing $660,000 for, it says the connection at Ebony, it says a lot of different things, which is different from what I believed on June 17th, which is the services are already there, we just have to cap them, but when we're ready, they're already there in the ground at the location. Can you clarify that, please?
Sure. Through the chair to Mayor Collier, the services are in the ground, so all of the connections underneath the park. So before we did the park work, all the pipes were put into the ground. The connection that has to happen at Ebony only happens if and when the washroom comes into approval. It's not a standard that we would do the connection and have a pipe sitting empty, because it's just not proper engineering. You would leave it and do the connection at that time. So that was the only piece that was missing. The rest of the infrastructure is in the ground. And there was services that were coming up at the location of the proposed washroom that needed to be capped. It was piped upturned.
Okay.
And needed to
So-
be capped properly for safety.
But my understanding with this prefab buildings, they tell you exactly where the drains and the water has to be located. You put in your new pad with those pipes located in that, and then just come in and pop it on top.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Is that the same for the option one, the concrete building?
Very similar, yes.
Okay. just looking at the resolution from June 17th, 3, that staff be directed to report back to council. So first of all, that the contract for Paradise Park washroom facility and site improvements be cancelled. And that staff be directed to complete the following work: soft landscaping, hard landscaping, valve box installation for service connections. 2, that upon completion of the work identified, the unused funds be reallocated to the development reserve from capital account 1003611. And 3, that staff be directed to report back to council with alternative design options for the Paradise Park washrooms in 2020. But in this report, I'm seeing site features like bike racks, waste containers, benches, landscaping, signage, etc., plus volleyball and an active play area, which are not part of the council direction to report back. So the 400,000 is separate, but all the other parts, how much of all that extra stuff that was not part of the resolution is in that 660,000? Bike racks, landscaping, signage, all those.
Through the chair, we didn't do an itemized breakdown for this. We just didn't want to make that our public to each that piece. But we, you know, the site work was complete that was outstanding. But if there's no building there, we didn't want to put benches or a water fountain. We would need all that. The building would have to go, and that work has to happen around it. And so, you know, there's no bike racks that have been installed yet at the plot of land where that is. There's some at the park, north of the property. But the water fountain can't go in until there's water servicing there, and proper signage for the building.
So last June, when we put the stop on this because it was too much money, was all that stuff, bike racks, waste containers, benches, landscaping, signage and everything, all in that washroom component? Because we did allow all the rest of the works to go ahead. And to me, benches, garbage cans, bike racks would have been part of that site works we allowed to go ahead with the finishing, the trail connections and all those things.
Through the chair to Mayor Collier, there are bike racks and there are waste containers located in the park area, but as part of looking at the program and the design holistically, we are looking to support the facility with bike racks and water fountains and those amenities as part of this project. So we would look to introduce those amenities as part of this project, just as we did in the very first design concept that came to council for the Paradise Washroom design.
Okay, well let's go back to that original for a minute, because we've already gone through the whole layout and everything. It was supposed to be a much bigger project, change room,
Yep.
washrooms, everything else. So we've already gone through detailed design. We've already gone through site plan. We've already gone through building permits. I assume we've already gone through soil testing. So why are these all included as items that we need to do again? To take a prefab concrete building and plop it on a pad in an existing project?
Through the chair, a new building means a new building permit, new site plan approval. All of those pieces that we had already established were for that specific building. There is required to obtain approval for those items again, since it's a new building.
So the fact that we canceled it, that we canceled the project, and had staff report back means that you have to go through all the process again.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Well, that's, because to be very honest with you, I support having a washroom there. We thought when we went to AMO that those concrete self-cleaning would be, and I understand there isn't one in Ontario, and hey, this is Ajax, we like to do things differently and we like to be unique, so that was a good fit, in my opinion, and I thought pretty much everybody was in agreement with that. Also the fact that they're self-cleaning and everything else, I find it interesting that staff would not give that a try before making the decision to put 4,000 a year in operating. Give it a try, it's got the features. When I looked at those, you know, the sinks are cement. The toilet, I think, is cement. I mean, you can't damage it and it will never wear out. So I didn't really understand I mean, of all the benefits you put over option 1 building, over option 2 building, all but one of them, and that is proprietary fixtures, were the same. right? So I'm having trouble justifying the $400,000 difference in cost. Also, with the option 2, you get 2 full accessible washrooms, versus option 1, you only get 1 accessible washroom and 1 unisex washroom. So I'm not there with that yet. But really, like what was the original budget on Paradise Park? Do you?
2.95.
2.59.
2.5, okay. And when it came to council, I believe it was 3.1 when we decided to not go ahead. Well, now, if we went with option 1 at 1.4, and we already spent, I think it's almost, was it 290 to do the?
260.
260, okay. So we're 1.66, and then to put it in perspective, if you put the volleyball back in, we're over 2 million. We're not far off what the original one is that we canceled. We've just split it into different pieces. Like we're less, but we're not that much less. I was thinking that we were, with the option 2 washrooms, we'd be somewhere in the neighborhood of under $500,000. And to me, the number, like a lot of residents will use this, but I'm thinking of what $1.4 million could be used that a lot of residents would use somewhere else. And I'm trying to, in my head, decide whether we're gonna get the bang for the buck here that we're gonna get somewhere else, like a Jumbotron in Pat Bailey Square, for instance, which is half the price of this. I think probably a lot more residents would benefit from that than a washroom down. So I'm just trying to balance this in my head, but I'll be very honest. My main concern with this is the $660,000 servicing just to put a prefab building on, because I thought we were much further along than that. And that's where I'm.
Through the chair, some of the prices we have for those base costs were previously tendered. They were part of the original project, so we have accurate tender numbers for what those cost from the first few tenders. It's been tendered twice. Unfortunately, that just is the cost. The piping goes up to the right of way on Ebony, and so they have to cut into the road, and it's 6 meters down and go and connect it to those servicing. So those are just the costs that we know from previously.
We would have that regardless.
That is correct,
that.
regardless of the building that goes there. These are our estimated costs. We have not completed our engineering yet or gone out to tender, but those are our estimated costs for the project.
Why would you need detailed design on a prefab building?
Again, those engineering into the road at Ebony, as well as where the piping needs to then end up exactly where the building will get put on the site. We need site plan approval to put the building there, and the piping will have to get modified to go into that location. As well, there is engineering that has to go into designing the footing and the foundation, because they're the slab on grade, because of the geotechnical studies that have been done, the water level high there. So all that needs to get done through an engineering firm with the building, regardless of what gets put there.
Okay. I have some amendments, but I will wait and let everybody speak first. Thank you.
Good. Regional Councilor Lee?
Thank you, Chair, through the chair to staff. Sorry, I wrote the question down. The flooding issue, which the mayor touched upon. So we don't need to do any flood preparation for this washroom as far as we see projected flood patterns, correct? We don't think it'll ever reach the washroom?
The elevation level, we know of exactly where the building would go. Waters have not been that high in the past. It has never reached that point. Again, the footings and the slab on grade will have proper waterproofing underneath them to mitigate if water does come high.
And that's for both scenarios?
That is
right?
correct,
Okay.
regardless.
Good to know. And at the time we got the demonstration for the portable toilet, we had spoken just very briefly, and you said you weren't just examining this one, you were examining other portable washrooms, correct?
Other washroom alternatives.
Sorry, thank you, yes. Did they not make the cut in terms of option 3, 4, 5, or these were generally just the 2 best ones?
These were the 2 best ones that we decided to bring forward.
And the volleyball, you guys are suggesting we put off for now. My flooding question still applies for that. We don't think we're just gonna wash all the sand away, right, from flooding. We think it's secure from flooding. So, yeah, I mean, like, it went down from 2.9 million to, it looks like 1.4, that I think I'm personally satisfied with the direction staff took. It's just a washroom. The other things are at council's discretion, and I am personally more comfortable with this. I mean, I've been on council for about a year and change, and I'm starting to realize how expensive things are. You know, I thought a traffic light was a few $1,000s, and now I'm finding out it's many thousands of dollars. So knowing that, and you know, the concessions being made, I would be okay with option 1 as is. So that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Regional Councillor Dyes?
Thank you. So, with this new one here, you're saying we still have to go through the site plans and permit applications. But we did discuss that previously, did we not? That if this was canceled, we would have to go through that process again with TRCA and blah, blah, blah.
Through the chair, yes, that was discussed.
So we knew that was part of the cost, and also then with the hookup as well?
That's correct.
So we also understand, well, I'd understand that, you know, a washroom is kind of a destination point. And so the benches and, you know, a bike rack is important. All those things that you need to put in there is also part of that delay. It would have gone in any different.
That's correct.
So it's really not an extra cost.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
So Madam Chair, at this time, you know, I would just like to move recommendation 1 be approved. I appreciate the work that you've done on this. I can tell council members that we've had a lot of complaints about washrooms not going in. It's a tourist destination. It's not a little corner park at the end of the street. It's a tourist destination. In any given weekend, you've got cyclists going through, which is part of our tourism, because they go through on tours, they go through to dinners in different municipalities. I think it's really, really important that we get a washroom in here as soon as possible for the walkers, the dog walkers, the cyclists, the kids. That's, Paradise Park has always been where there's been a playground and tennis courts, and people still naturally go to that area. And I think we've delayed it enough. We knew what some of the pitfalls were in the delay, and every time you delay it, the cost goes up as well. That was the issue from last time. The cost, it had been delayed a year and the costs have gone up. So I really would like to see this going as soon as possible, as with the area residents and our visitors who go through our waterfront on a regular basis. So I'm bringing that motion forward. I think we need 2/3 to approve that.
Can you repeat the motion?
Yes, it's,
The recommendation for
I have
number
some
1
questions
to be
too.
approved by council.
should I
So,
read it?
so Regional Councillor Dyes is asking for a motion to
On
approve.
page 26.
Option 1.
The
Option
June
1.
17, 2019 council resolution directing staff to reallocate the unused funds of the Paradise Park Washroom Capital Project to the development reserve from capital account 1003611 upon completion of the work be reconsidered, and reconsideration requires a 2/3 majority vote.
So that's the first thing which we vote on separately, and then after that, we would look at the other steps.
Can I
Okay,
speak?
so now,
Not prepared to vote.
okay, so Regional Councillor Crawford had some comments to make or questions to ask. Go ahead.
I won't be supporting option 1 simply because it's $400,000. I think that we saw a very good demonstration of an option 2. That is what I'm going to support. It's saving the town $400,000, and I think that in any situation, if we can save money, that's what we should be trying to do. It's unique. It's a standalone in Durham region. I love being the first to try anything. And I also like the fact that it's, okay, there was a guarantee on the life, is it 10 years?
Yeah.
3 years,
3 years.
25,000.
No, 10 years on the building.
10 years on the building,
Yes.
so they'll replace it over 10 years.
25,000 flashes.
And what was it, 25?
25,000 use.
Right. So I like the fact that that is at the risk of the owner of the building and not at our risk. So for me, that is what I'm going to be voting in favor of.
Point of order, or just question. So the first question is 3/5 to just even talk about it.
Oh, sorry.
Great. No.
Sorry.
And then the next one is option 1 or
Which
2.
option?
I just want to make sure
Okay.
we know what we're
Okay.
voting for. Thank you.
I just,
So we have to have a motion on the 2/3?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Still
Okay.
Yeah,
questions.
still
we
questions.
did.
No,
no,
that's-
no
Motion's on the
questions.
floor for 2/3.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
Director
My bad.
Cooper, please guide.
If I could just recommend, so, recommendation one needs to be approved.
Yes.
Before we have the next
Before the
part,
other ones are
yeah.
considered, and,
That's
um,
my question.
pending approval of that, council could debate option one versus option two versus any other option, but I think it would be helpful to just get that out of the way. I suspect everyone's in agreement to not returning those funds, to the reserve, so I would just like to suggest
So,
that.
wait a
That's
minute,
fine.
so we're voting on the motion that's on here first?
Just clause
Just number
one,
one,
which
clause
is,
one.
which is simply to say that the previous direction, which was basically that the capital account be closed and the money be
Okay.
sent back to the reserve, it's just to allow debate on option one versus
Okay,
option two.
so then can we do these at one at a time, so I don't get confused?
Yes.
Okay, go.
Okay,
No, no.
so, regional councilor Dye.
Boy, a privilege.
Do you have me on the
Easily.
I was
speaking?
joking.
Do you have me on the speaking list?
I'm joking.
Go.
No, so first,
Because I've been on there for a while.
okay, so, yes, I should pass the first motion. So then, based on the results of that, we carry on with the discussion and questions about the other options. So, bullet one says that Regional Councilor Dyes has moved that the June 17, 2019 council resolution directing staff to reallocate the unused funds of the Paradise Park Washroom Capital Project to the Development Reserve from capital account 1003611 upon completion of the work be reconsidered. And it requires 2/3 vote to reopen. So Councilor Dyes has
Point of
motioned
order,
it,
that's not her
moved it.
motion. Her motion is moving option one.
That's what I thought I
No,
heard.
it's number one here
She
about
said-
the
yeah.
reserves.
That was the
Oh,
confusion.
the option.
Number one of
Number
recommendation,
one.
not
It's
option.
the
Oh,
recommendation
okay,
one.
okay.
So Regional Councilor Dyes, what I've read is what you've moved.
Correct.
Do we discuss it or we just
Yes,
vote?
no, you have discussion.
Question.
Let's discuss on it now, okay. So Mayor Collier can go first, and then anybody else can go after.
I just have a question regarding to the Director of Finance, Acting Director of Finance on the procedural of this. And the clerk has, I think, clarified that option one applies either way. Before we do recommendation one,
Recommendation one.
sorry.
Say option one.
That's my mistake. Recommendation one applies either way if we want to move anything forward.
Pretty sure that's correct.
Okay, so we have to reverse the decision reallocating the funds first. If we don't do that, nothing else matters.
To Chair, the capital account is still open. The 2.5 million is sitting in the account. So
Mhm.
there's no, we haven't reallocated the funds to the development reserve. The capital account is still open. The funds are still.
Then why do we need recommendation one?
So why is it there?
In terms of the option to proceed, like which one of the washrooms will.
Somebody's waving at the end of the
Thank
table.
you,
Yeah, the bank's still there, it hasn't
Not
gone
helping
anywhere.
people.
Don't you just want this done?
It's basically a technicality. Council directed staff previously to cancel it and put it back. That hasn't been done yet based on different things that were going on, and then this report was coming forward. So you have to reverse that decision and so that the funds are available, and then you can discuss the other options.
But I've asked that question a couple of times, pretty clearly, I think, that those funds are still available. That project still is on, the other parts were not, but the washroom-specific piece was still open and on the books.
It is, but council directed staff to cancel it. They just haven't done so yet. So
Okay.
if you vote on number one and it's approved, then the funds remain available.
Okay, because that was never the intent to cancel. The project was referred back to come back with other options.
Director Richmond.
And through the chair, the $2.5 million for clarification as part of the capital project included the volleyball courts and
I knew that.
the natural play area. So even though council didn't direct us to bring back information in regards to that, it's closing the loop in regards to what's happening with that part of the capital project going forward. Understanding also that this has gone through an extensive public engagement
Yep.
process. So if somebody was to look at this a couple years down the road, what happened to the washrooms? You have a report that now guides you.
But-
It's being referred back to the long-range capital forecast.
Okay. I
Okay.
believe that public engagement was not, people weren't doing backflips over having the washroom there. It was kind of a bit controversial, to my recollection.
The money was.
But
I think that the washrooms were always in general supported. I think the
It was the
upgrades
change
to
room
the.
and everything
there-
else
there
and the
was a
size of the
number
building.
There was a number of elements that took place as part of the capital project, which included the realignment of Lakeview Boulevard, it included a washroom component, it included the volleyball courts and the natural play area, so there was a number of components to this project, and during the steering committee public engagement that happened, there were varying opinions from various members of,
Okay.
the public.
Acting
So-
Director of Finance, did you have a comment related to this discussion?
Yeah,
Thank
just to
you.
clarify, so the account is still open and the direction was to close after the work was done. But if we do close the account, we would need to do an unbudgeted capital for this work. So the thought process was just keep it open, the funding is there. If this gets approved, then we could just transfer the remaining funds. So administratively, it's just easier, but it's up to council.
So procedurally, thank you for that, so procedurally, one has to happen for 2, 3, or 4 to happen. But I'm not gonna vote yes for option 1 until I know what 2, 3, and 4 are. So if the option, because we need to know, the staff recommendation is option 1, not recommendation 1, option 1, which is the concrete building with, it's option 1, the one unisex washroom and the one accessible washroom and the utility building. So we need to know what that is. So I guess just through your chair to Councillor Dyes, was your intention to move option 1, which is the staff recommendation? That's what I heard that's what I understood when you made your motion. I just want to understand what's in front of us.
It's a recommendation about funds going back into the capital.
She said option 1 like you did, but it's actually number 1.
Recommendation.
I swear, I'm not making
Okay.
a decision on the
Okay.
recommendation.
It's
I
just a
understand.
recommendation.
It's gonna buy one
Asking
here.
a question,
Or on the options.
because, yeah, we can't
It's
vote on
not about
option
the
1.
options, move the money, then we talk options.
It was stated,
Okay, so what we're doing now is we're continuing discussion about moving recommendation number 1 that Regional Councillor Dyes has put forward. So the directors have finished talking. Mayor, you've spoken. Regional Councillor Crawford, you had comments about that?
We're not clear on this yet, Chair.
I know, but I
Respectfully, I
just-
still the floor. The recommendation is 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's the recommendation. Nowhere have we said we're gonna divide this and deal with it
Oh.
one at a time.
How do
So
I interrupt
that's
you to tell
recommendation.
you
Go ahead.
that the, Alec, the clerk, had sent, not Alec, Sarah, but I received an email that said, and I'm sorry that I
Right.
thought that everybody else would know this, but it said, unlike most other consent reports at GGC, where you vote on all the recommendations at once, the recommendations in this report need to be voted in a particular order. This would be the ideal order. A mover, in this case Regional Councillor Dyes, moves recommendation 1 to determine if council will reconsider the previous direction to close the capital account. We vote on that motion to adopt recommendation 1. Based
Okay.
on that result, if recommendation 1 passes, then we move on to consider recommendations 2 and 3 together. If recommendation 1 fails, then we move to consider recommendations 2 and 4 together.
Okay. And that's what I was getting at.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So are there, Regional Councillor Crawford wanted to talk about this.
No, I just wanted to, I'm just overstating this now at this point. If you vote in favor, if we vote in favor of recommendation 1, we are not making a decision
Right.
on anything other than the funding.
Right.
Correct.
Done.
Thank you.
Done.
There.
Correct.
Asking that question.
Okay. Any
Yeah,
other
that's trying to
questions
say.
about the motion for recommendation 1?
Dumbed it down.
I was gonna make it
No?
that's
Okay.
fine. No,
So it's moved by Councillor Dyes.
It's confusing.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4,
2/3.
5, 6, 7. The motion carries 2/3. Okay, so now what our option is, if recommendation 1 passes, which it did, a member can move to adopt recommendations 2 and 3 together. But we need to discuss.
Or make an amend.
I'll move an amendment.
Right.
Okay, so
So,
now we're looking at 2 and 3 because 1 passed.
right,
Recommendation 2 and 3.
so let me go back to my.
Let's just make sure.
No, it's relevant.
I have an amendment.
It's relevant.
So,
'Cause I was
Mayor
standing-
Collier has an amendment,
There's an option,
so
that's fine.
you can go first.
I will amend recommendation 2 and change the word option 1, change the 1 to a 2. So it would read that council approve Paradise Park washroom building installation option 2 as detailed in this report, and I believe we go to 4 after that. that if recommendation number 1 is not passed, council directs staff to include the design and construction of Paradise Park Washroom Building option 2,
No.
sorry.
It's recommendation, it would still.
So
it would
if
still
we
do
do,
2 and 3.
if we change option 2 to option 2,
The number 3 still applies, because it's recommendation 1, which we
got it.
just passed 2/3.
Okay, so I will move that amendment,
it,
and I'll
Sarah.
just
All
speak
of
to
us.
it quickly.
Changing that to.
And similar to Councilor Crawford's,
Changing that to.
yeah, similar to Councilor Crawford's
Comments.
what she said, her comments. I mean, this went back because of the cost. And quite honestly, a lot of our park stuff have porta potties. I mean, this is obviously a permanent solution. But the thing I like, and I spoke to quickly about the option 2, with those buildings were kind of innovative. They're new. Yeah, other people don't have them yet, and I like being first. I like being different. I know, I'm sorry, Catherine, I know you're not. With that comes some growing pains, perhaps.
And potentially some risk.
And some risks. But you know what? We have $400,000 still in the budget to maybe mediate those risks potentially, but I don't see them. I mean, I was very impressed with the product. I think we're all impressed with the product. And they even came here and did a demonstration. And to me, I think it's a good fit here. I think it gets what we need done. It puts the budget more in line. I am disappointed with the 660, but I think we need to get this done. It's more than I hoped we would spend on this, but I think it gets what needs to be done there. I think it will look great because you can choose whatever finishes you want. It's included. It's all included. So you choose whatever finishes you want. I also would like staff to give it if this passes, an opportunity to see if that whole self-cleaning and self-monitoring thing does work. Because this is something that maybe we could use in other areas as well and leverage staff time a little bit better rather than clearing washrooms, maybe picking up litter or doing other things. So I think it's kind of a cool idea, and I would like to see this project finished and put to bed and moved on. So I will make that amendment, and hopefully we can do some other stuff.
So now, I think Regional Councilor Crawford wanted to speak to the amendment. Is that, we're all talking about the
On the
amendment?
amendment.
Okay, go ahead.
My question is, in the description it said there's heated floors. Is this gonna be open in the winter anyway?
Yep.
It
Through the
is.
chair, yes.
It is.
Regional Council Crawford, yes.
Okay.
It's a 12-month building.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right. I totally get why staff would recommend 1, because of the comfort level of already having these buildings in place and trying something new. Yeah, there's always a risk, but I like it, and I think we should, like I said before, we can save $400,000, and I think we need to try to do what we can to do that. Number 2 for me.
Are there any other, Regional Councilor Lee?
I personally am of the mindset that if it was a greater delta in between the 2 prices, then yes, I would obviously go number 2. But at $350,000, we like to staff's recommendation, we don't know this. Our council's experience with this was maybe 1-hour demo. We didn't flush the toilet, we didn't hook up to water, we don't know what this is. Whereas option 1, we know exactly what we're getting, we know exactly how to work within any sort of issues that may arise. And I'm not anti-innovation, obviously not, but I don't, innovation's great, but not by toilets, like I don't think this should be our,
Why not start with
That's
toilets?
half
our
the
reputation.
Jumbotron, then.
Yeah, fair enough, but
Half
to
the
me,
Jumbotron.
to also be very brutally honest, I'm not necessarily tied to either option, but in this case, I will defer to staff. They do know what works, what doesn't work, and Councilor Crawford said if this works, then we'll save $400,000. If it doesn't work, this could cost us more. We don't.
$100,000.
Right, we don't know. So it's a chance we take if we go with option 2, but I for one would support option 1 as my first choice. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments? Regional Councilor Dies.
Thank you. So, I also like to be first with new innovative ideas. However, it's not all my money, is it? And I think sometimes we have to go with what we feel we're comfortable with, and I trust staff in that. They've looked at different models, not just these 2. These are the 2 they chose to bring forward. So they've looked at other models, and these are the ones they're comfortable with, and the recommendation is the one option they have decided to go with. And I trust that. It's less money than you wanted to spend, and I think that was the issue all along. So I would only support option 1. I think it's been vetted very well. I think we know what we're getting. And I have a question for the CAO, because the Jumbotron keeps coming up. I've not had a report, I've never had costs on it, I haven't had anything about a Jumbotron in Pat Bailey Square. It was not on our previous agenda, on
Sure
our other
was.
council. We talked about events, we don't really know how the scheduled events are gonna work in there, so will we be seeing any kind of information coming forward soon? Because it's like we're fishing for pennies here from one pot to provide money for a Jumbotron that we don't know anything about.
Through you, Madam Chair, I haven't been given direction to bring forward a new report on the general fund at this time.
Is this something the town is seriously considering then?
Point of
Madam
order, this
Chair.
was part of the original bid for Pat Bailey Square, and we took it out based on the policy because it was over budget. It is part, it's always been part of Pat Bailey Square.
Isn't part of this report though?
No, point of order.
It's not
We
part
should
of-
keep-
it's
It
not part
came
of
up,
this
it
report.
came
I know,
up
but
about money,
deal
so I
with it
just
after we
want
deal
to
with this.
know if we are going to get some sort of report or some information in future about this other cost that keeps popping up.
Through you, Madam Chair, I have not been given direction by council to bring back a report.
Okay, is that the answer to your question? Okay. Is that all your questions to this?
Sorry?
Is that what
I'm done,
you
yes,
have?
thank
Okay, any other counselors have comments or questions? No? Okay, so, option 2, thank you for the report. I never actually asked any questions about it. So, I did have a question about, if you pick option 2, so we know that the life cycle or the warranty of that building, there was 2 numbers, 3 years and 10 years. Which is which?
The shell of the structure is 10-year warranty, so
Okay.
this is actual, the walls, the doors, the outside of the building. The interior components are a 3-year or 25,000 use warranty.
Okay, so what are the statistics on option number 1? The concrete permanent structure, do we know that? Like, what's the life of that building or those interiors?
So with regard to a warranty, we would have our standard builder's warranty, which is a 2-year warranty for a new build that we would do. Outside of that, there's no official warranty on the whole components. You know, the boiler will have its own warranty from the manufacturer, along with the HVAC system. And then, you know, that would be it for a warranty standpoint. And a precast concrete building, you know, has a lifespan of 50 years. So that would be the expectation with the shell of the building. That building would last for 50 years with regular life cycle replacement, toilets, roof, that sort of work, doors, door frames.
Okay. And I know there was 25,000 uses given on Urban Blue. Do we have that kind of statistic? It's kind of a weird question. I guess you wouldn't really look at that. But is there any kind of statistic like that for the other facilities that we currently have in town?
The statistics on our satellite washrooms, I do not know if we have any. We don't monitor it.
Yeah, I didn't
This
think so.
building would
We don't
have
have any
monitoring.
there.
Because it's all automated, it knows exactly how many uses will be done. It's all through their electronics and their app that would tell you. So we would be able to monitor how many days it's used, how many times per day. We would have that statistic with that building installed, but we don't have that kind of information ahead of time.
Okay, thank you. And, I had another question. I had another question, but I forgot because I was getting distracted. Okay, so are there any other questions? Director Bridgman?
I just want to make one final comment. The Paradise Washrooms has been a project that's been on the agenda for a very long time.
Yes.
In understanding the political sensitivity to this project, we looked at it through the eyes of risk as well. We have a number of the high-grade buildings throughout town. We use them whenever we install a splash pad. We use them for the mechanical system. So it also, to Lindsay's presentation, has it's always performed or outperformed in the Ontario climate within, you know, the parameters that we've designed for. We have the ability to go buy a toilet to replace the partitions as time goes on. The concern and the overall discussion that was had in the office was the new, and there's always a risk. And at the same time we evaluated it, we had all of the staff that would be supporting that facility, the plumbers, the electricians, everybody looking at it. you're getting into a proprietary situation with this manufacturer over the long term of this asset. So looking at it through the eyes of asset management as well, where are we going to be able to source this material going forward? You can't go to a number of manufacturers to get this equipment to replace items as they reach the end of their useful lifespan. So understanding that and trying to look at that through whole life cycle costing, how much is this gonna cost us to maintain over the life of the asset is really what we're looking at now going forward. And getting ourselves into a proprietary situation was concerning as well. And it's a new technology, so as much as I enjoy being an innovator and an innovative thinker and moving that forward, it's staff's duty to advise council that it is a bit of a risk, and we are taking that on. And if the toilet breaks or some of the mechanical breaks, we are going back to that one manufacturer that can provide us that going forward. So I understand there's a cost associated with that, but if they come back to us in a couple of years after the 2,500 uses or 25,000 uses are done, and we have no ability to negotiate costs, then that goes to operating dollars. So that $4,000 will become higher, potentially. So there's been a lot of discussion internally in regards to this moving forward, and we understand there's costs associated with it. However, we wanted to present both options for council's consideration.
Okay. So what we are voting on right now is the amended motion of recommendation number 2. 3 or 2?
Call the question.
With option 2.
Okay, the council approved Paradise Park Washroom Building installation option 2 as detailed in this report. And the council approved the use of capital account number 1003611 for the design and construction of Paradise Park Washroom Building option 2. Yeah, no, I'm just, sorry?
Just call the question.
Okay, what does that mean? Does anyone have questions?
All in favor?
Oh, okay, all right. Okay. No, I'm just waiting. Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried.
Flip to that.
Okay, sorry. Now we move the main motion. I'm just, ooh, that was a big
I'll
one.
move the main motion.
Moved by Mayor Colley. Main motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Passes.
Nobody opposed.
Councilmember Payne.
Okay.
Got your washroom.
Let me take a breath.
For the
Got your washroom.
Gonna say, got a washroom down there.
Then you're in trouble.
Anybody cut it?
Nobody
Okay.
double flush.
So number 6, that is
We don't get our bank
completed.
back.
So we're gonna move to the closed section after we take a 5-minute break.
Motion to recess 5 minutes.
Motion, okay, all in favor? Okay, 5 minutes, 2:33.
As the guys are plowing, and there's a car there.
recess,
It's a
everybody.
mess.
Okay?
That's one street.
Camera's going back on.
We're going in camera?
We're
Or
in
sorry,
camera.
what's it called now? Not in camera.
So if we move to go on camera,
Good job,
ratify
Ashley.
the decision.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're back in the open session, so we will ratify the work that we did in the closed session. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, passes. And now we need a motion to adjourn. Counselor Khan, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you.
Good job, Chair.
Good meeting.